All right, next we're going to talk about subtraction in other bases. Now the key to subtraction in other bases is to realize that when you borrow, you have to borrow the value of the base. So in other bases, 10 or 1, 0 equals the value of the base. So if I write 1, 0 base 4, that's really saying 4. So we're always going to have to borrow the value of the base. To start off, let's talk about subtraction in our base 10. So I could do something like 427 minus 182. Now when we do these subtractions, we can do 7 minus 2, and that just equals 5. But 2 minus 8, we can't take away 8 from 2. That's just not enough. So what we have to do is borrow from the next place value over. We have to borrow from this 4. And so what you were taught is to cross off the 4, and that becomes a 3, and we're borrowing one of these guys, so we're just going to put it right here. Now essentially what you were doing here is you were borrowing the value of the base. You actually borrowed a 10 or a 1, 0 if you will, and we can just put it there with one group of 10 with 2 left over. And now you thought 12 minus 8. Okay. Now again, if we look at this and we still did it in columns, we would do 2 minus 8. Well, we can't do that, so we'd borrow from the 1, bring it over. Okay, so there's a little bit of understanding here about what we're doing here. When we have 12 minus 8, we know that that answer is 4 right there. But the biggest deal is we borrowed a 10, a value of the base. Then we have 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay, now we got to get the order right here. It says subtract 1004 base 5 from 3032 base 5. So it looks like this: 3032 base 5 minus 1004 base 5. Now right away we have 2 minus 4, and we can't do that. So what we're going to do is borrow from the one next door. So that crosses off, it does become 2. Now here is the trick. I'm not just going to write a 1 right there, because in our mind we don't think of the 1 as being a base 5, but instead we're going to borrow the value of the base. Well, the base is 5, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a 5 right here. And what I'm going to think is 5 plus 2 minus 4. So 5 plus 2 minus 4, we can do that. That's 7 minus 4, which is just 3. So we would get 3 right here. Okay, so that's how we borrow the value of the base, is we actually borrow a 5 instead of a 10. Alright, now 2 minus 0, that's not a problem, we can do that. 0 minus 0, that's not a problem, we can do that. 3 minus 1, that's 2. So we get 2023 base 5. Okay, I want you to go ahead and try example 7 on your own, and then go ahead and come on back and check your work when you're done. Alright, welcome back. So here 8 minus 5 was 3, that was no problem. 6 minus 9, that didn't work, and so what you had to do is borrow from the 4, and so there were 3 left here, and you borrowed the value of the base, which was 12. And so then you can do this right here, which would be 12 plus 6 minus 9, so that's 18 minus 9, which is 9, so you can put your 9 there, and then you just do 3 minus 2 is 1, and you got 193 base 12. And in our next example, sometimes it works out nicely where you don't have to borrow at all, and this is one of those times. So this is a nice easy one. 5 minus 3 is 2, 2 minus 1 is 1, 7 minus 2 is 5, so it's 512 base 8, no problems there. Let's take a look at our next one. Base 2. Base 2 always weirds me out a little bit because we only have ones and zeros, and so it just feels very uncomfortable in dealing with this. But we can do everything exactly the same as we were doing before. So we do 0 minus 1 can't do. So we're going to borrow from next door, and that becomes a 0. Okay, it goes down by 1. And how much do we borrow? In our mind, we're going to borrow the value of the base. So this is 2 plus 0 minus 1, which is just 1. Now 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 minus 1 we can't do. So we would look next door to borrow. But when you look next door, there's nothing there. So we can't borrow there. We have to look next door again. And so we're going to cross this off. That's going to go down to 0. And we're going to borrow the value of the base. So we actually put 2 here. Now remember, we had to borrow for this place value because we can't do 0 minus 1. So we're going to borrow again from the 2. That'll be a 1. And how much do we borrow? It's a mantra. We always borrow the value of the base. It's got to be 2. So here we have 2 plus 0 minus 1 is 1. And then 1 minus 1 is 0. And then this would be 0 minus 0 is 0. So our final answer here is 1, 0, 1, base 2. And that is subtraction in other bases.